do have, I'll start with the COB board members and I'll just go through the entire list, even though only new members are required to attend. I have Stephen Rovak, who is not new, Sierra Simmerl, Christine Brooks, who is new and should be on the call, Derek Kilgore, who is new
I'm
and
here.
should be on the call. Are you there?
I'm present.
Okay, Christine Brooks.
She just sent an email to me and Louisa saying that she was not going to be on this evening.
Oh, okay. Harrison Sand,
Present.
Jennifer Whitaker. Jennifer Whitaker. Keith Rose.
Keith Rose is present.
Okay. And I'll go back to Bradley Ortega, who is not required to be here. Brad, are you on the call? Those are the COB board members. Now, let me go through the DFOB. I think we only have 2 new DFOB members who should be here. I'll save time by not going through all of them. Usman Gay. Usman Gay, are you on the call? Kanika Harper.
I don't see her, Ruby.
Okay, Kanika's not on the call. All right, then that's who's present today for both boards. I'll turn it back to you, Nicole.
Thank you, Ruby. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being on the call today. I know we have staff on here as well. Thanks, everyone, for being present. And this evening, we have Brian Beckelman, who's with our Department of Personnel, our Deputy Director of Personnel. Thanks, Brian, so much for being here today. And Brian is going to deliver training on civil service rules and employee rights under state and federal laws. So Brian, we are going to turn this over to you, and thank you so much for your willingness to be here for this training this evening.
You're very, very welcome, Nicole. Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be of service and honor to be here, and I hope this presentation will be helpful. I'm one of several deputy directors in the Department of Personnel now, but I guess I end up doing these presentations because I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to learn in my career at the city a little bit about the charter and work with people who know it even better than me. So with that said, what I'm going to try and do is take a lot of dense legalese and just break it down into easy to digest and understand layperson's terms. As I mentioned earlier, I've had a lot of coffee today. It's been a long day, and unfortunately, I didn't get to prepare as much as I wanted to. So it's been more than a minute since I've looked at this presentation. And being nervous and drinking a lot of coffee, I may talk fast. So stop me if I'm going too fast or you want something repeated. And don't be shy. Please speak up if you have any questions. That's what I'm here for, to try and be of assistance and help. So with that said, I'm going to try and pull up this presentation. Let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, I'm sending a request to share my screen.
Got it.
Cool, thank you. I wish I was very, very techie and good at that sort of thing, but I am not. So if I look like an idiot while I do this, make no mistake, I really am an idiot. Do, do, do. Let's see. So I've got the presentation here on my screen. Do you know if I'm able to share my screen yet?
Yep, you should just be able to click share at the bottom.
Okay, cool. Okay. Documents. Let me see if I can. All right, bear with me. Again, I apologize.
Brian, I have it as well. I can try to share it too if you,
That would be awesome if you
okay,
could.
let me see if I can get it open here too.
I apologize.
No worries.
Thank you.
Nicole, you need me to make you host, you can share.
Yeah, or Answer, if you want to share it either way. Either
Oh.
way, I'm fine. Cause I just don't want to move too, well, wait, I got it. Okay.
There you go.
All righty. Let me see here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Indeed.
All right.
Okay, great. So everyone, this presentation is on the city's charter, specifically Article 18 and the civil service rules. So what does that mean? Basically, we're a charter city. Our charter is our constitution and organic law, which is great in that it gives us a lot of flexibility in how we govern ourselves. The charter basically is Article 18 is titled Civil Service because it establishes the City of St. Louis Civil Service, the powers and duties of the Civil Service Commission and of the Director of Personnel and the Department of Personnel and basic rights and benefits to being a City of St. Louis civil service employee. And then from that, we promulgate our civil service rules. They can be prepared by the Director of Personnel and changed by the Civil Service Commissioners, who are appointees of the mayor. But again, the charter trumps everything because that's our basic law. The rules just further flesh out the language and directives in the city charter. So with that said, I will shut up, and if we can move on to the next slide, please.
Okay, so I'm trying to, it doesn't want to go to the next slide. Hey, Angela, Angela, do you have the slides too? Are you able to share them on
No,
your?
I don't have them.
Okay, I thought Brian sent an email just a little bit ago to both of us. So let me see if
Let
I
me
can
check and see if I got it.
Yeah, sorry, I see it right here in front of me.
and it's just not letting me. My computer crashed the other day, by the way, and they had to re-image everything. I just brought it back to me this afternoon.
I
Sorry about
sympathize. Yeah, I've had one issue after another with my laptop. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
All right, hold on.
Excuse me, just by way of suggestion, maybe you could just share it with Ansel ICU or in Google Sheets
I
or
see it.
Google Slides. Okay.
You got it, Answer?
Yeah, send me the host back.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay, let me get back to you. Okay, now it doesn't want to do that either. I'm so sorry, y'all. It's not giving me an option to answer. Let me see if it's Okay, here, let me try this. Let me try one more thing. Okay, did that work?
Yep, I got
Okay,
it.
perfect. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Awesome. Okay, so our next slide is
Put it up.
awesome. So, at the risk of being a little redundant, I suppose I got ahead of myself. The city's charter is its governing structure. It was amended in the early 1940s to replace its politically controlled efficiency board with the aforementioned Article 18 civil service. And really, to quote the charter, the objective of our civil service system is to create a professional career government service free from political influences. It's the exact opposite of what's commonly referred to as a patronage or spoils system or pay to play. Maybe that's another common term. And then our merit principles and policies established in Article 18 are basic requirements for our civil service system. Now, if we could go on to the next slide, please. Article 18 establishes all of the following: the Department of Personnel, the Civil Service Commission, the Commission's powers and duties as a quasi-judicial body, the Director of Personnel, as well as the qualifications, powers, and duties for the Director, and that civil service merit-based testing for fitness and duty. What does that mean? Basically, you don't just hire whoever you want because they made a generous contribution to a political campaign or there's somebody's nephew or cousin. You actually have to meet certain job requirements that are related to predictive on-the-job future successful performance. The charter also defines who makes the certified appointments, promotions, demotions, transfers, dismissals, and any other disciplinary actions. And that would be each city department's appointing authority. So does that mean, what that basically means is I'm a deputy director of personnel. I don't really have the authority to tell a director of public safety or a director of parks, recreation, and forestry to promote or hire one of their employees. That's solely at the discretion of each department's appointing authority. If we could move on to the next slide, please. Here's a little bit of detail on the Director of Personnel's powers and duties. The director is responsible for providing for the classification of all positions on the basis of their duties, responsibilities, and resulting qualifications, requirements, etc. What does classification mean? The easiest way I know how to put it is it's the process for determining whether or not a position is really an accountant position or an accounting manager position, whether or not this job in the law department is a attorney or a attorney manager, if that makes sense. Another duty is for creating the compensation plan for development and recommendation of a systematic compensation plan based on charter principle of like pay for like work. It also creates the civil service rating system. And with that, consideration is given in examinations for promotions, increases in pay, layoffs, etc. There's also a responsibility for competitive examinations, and our charter provides that exams shall be practical in character and designed fairly to measure relative qualifications of candidates for all civil service positions. A result of those competitive examinations is eligible lists. List established from testing individuals ranked in final overall passing score order. There's also a responsibility for certification and appointments. That basically means that whenever an appointing authority has a job opening at the city, they will fill that civil service vacancy from an eligible list, and the department or director of personnel sends the 6 highest ranked candidates on that eligible list to the appointing authority for filling their vacancy. And if we can move on to the next slide, please. This is going to cover additional powers and duties of the Director of Personnel. Employee transactions. According to Article 18, the Director of Personnel must approve or disapprove all appointments, demotions, transfers, promotions, service ratings, leaves of absence and rates of pay, suspensions, separations, and other employment transactions affecting the status of employees. In easiest terms, the Director of Personnel is solely responsible by city charter for approving all civil service employment transactions. Investigations. The Director of Personnel has the authority to administer oaths, to subpoena, and require attendance of witnesses within the city. Our Civil Service Article 18 also strictly governs political activity. And this has further been defined by civil service rules and Department of Personnel administrative regulations. Civil service employees are prohibited from taking an active part in a partisan political campaign and taking vacation leave or a leave of absence to work on political campaigns. We are here to cooperate with and serve the elected officials. We are not here to help them get elected or stay in office. We are to be a neutral party. Nor shall civil service employees be under any obligation to contribute money or anything of value to any political fund or to render any political service to any partisan or nonpartisan candidate, political fund, political campaign, or other political project against his or her free will. So could we move on to the next slide, please? So the civil service rules. The rules are promulgated from Article 18. They take what is in the charter and drill down into further detail. The Director of Personnel has charter authority to prepare changes to the rules for the Civil Service Commission's approval. The Commission has charter authority to vote to enact changes to its rules. And our Board of Aldermen can legislate city ordinances that affect civil service employment. And a really good example are the Board of Aldermen ordinances for veterans or disabled veterans preference points on or city residency preference points on civil service test. Moving on to the next slide. So what happens if proposed changes to rules and ordinances conflict with the charter? The easy answer is the charter trumps them. Per the charter, the Director of Personnel has the authority to, quote, make such administrative regulations as they may deem necessary, not inconsistent with the charter, ordinances applicable, and these rules relative to matters involved in the administration of the personnel provisions of such charter, ordinances, and rules. Changes to the charter must go to a public vote. It takes approximately 2/3 vote or 60% of the city voting residents to pass amendments to the city's charter. And if we could move on to the next slide. There are currently 20 rules, and here's Civil Service Rules 1 through 8. And again, this is all taken directly from Article 18. Rule 1 is definitions, which is basically a bunch of legalese that is later referred to in the charter and the rules. Rule 2 is general provisions, how these definitions and the basic tenets of the charter are to be interpreted and applied. Rule 3 establishes the Civil Service Commission, its organization and procedures. Rule 4 is the classification plan. 5 is the compensation plan. Rule 6 is test. Rule 7 is certification and appointment. Certification is just a fancy way of saying sending the names of candidates within referral and immediate hire range off a list to an appointing authority so they can interview them and hire them. Civil Service Rule 8 is working test. That's our fancy city way of saying probationary period. Our next slide pertains to rules 9 through 16. Rule 9 is separation and disciplinary actions. Rule 10 is our service ratings. Rule 11 is hours of work, leave, and working conditions. Rule 12 is employee welfare. And that basically covers the Director of Personnel's responsibility to have an attractive civil service to the employees and specific programs to benefit employees. A good example would be our EAP program. These are not remarkable. Most employers have them. This would be a byproduct of Rule 12, employee welfare programs. Rule 13, appeals, hearings, investigations, and reviews. This covers a civil service employee's rights pertaining to appealing to the Civil Service Commission. If an employee is fired by their appointing authority after their due process, they have a right to appeal any disciplinary action, including a dismissal, to the Civil Service Commission. If the Director of Personnel turns down a request from an appointing authority, that appointing authority can appeal the director's decision to the Civil Service Commission. Rule 14 covers records and reports. It, in easiest terms, is our obligations to report, such as an annual report from the Director of Personnel to the Civil Service Commission. This is in addition to basic legal requirements such as Missouri Sunshine Law. Rule 15 covers political activity. Rule 16 covers equal employment opportunity. And if we can move on to our next slide, that covers Rules 17 through 20. Rule 17 outlines audits of city payrolls. Rule 18 covers labor relations, and basically that's our requirement under guidelines and rules established by the Missouri State Board of Mediation to meet with collective bargaining groups or that represent employees at the city that are members of labor and to negotiate with them in good faith. Rule 19 is confidentiality of police officer records and exceptions. And Rule 20 is validity of these rules. More legalese is the easiest way I know how to put that one. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to focus on Rules 8, 9, and 13 because they are the most relevant to an appointing authority's ability to discipline and dismiss permanent civil service employees. So if we could move on to the next slide, please. Okay, overview of the most relevant rules. Now, I know we're the Civilian Oversight and Detention Facilities Oversight Board, but there's a special kind of confidentiality of police officer records and exceptions. And when I've done this presentation before, that material was covered by Erica Zaza, the Sunshine Law Administrator for the Police Division. So I'm going to pass over that, defer that to Ms. Zaza, and next talk about Civil Service Rule 8, working test. That's emphasized because newly hired and promoted civil service employees work in a mandatory probationary period, which they must successfully complete. And employees only receive permanent status and civil service protections in their positions as a result of successful completion of their working test periods. Failure to successfully complete a working test period results in dismissal for a probationary employee. And employees without status have no appeal rights to the Civil Service Commission in accordance with Civil Service Rule 13. And if we move on to the next slide, please, which is an overview of these rules. Civil service employees who fail working test periods resulting from promotions return to their previous occupied positions if they had status in them. So let's use an easy example. Let's say I am a police lieutenant and I promote to police captain, hypothetically speaking. If I do not pass my working test period as a captain, but I worked long enough as a police lieutenant to have status in that position, when the police chief fails my working test period as a captain, I go back to being a police lieutenant. Might not be the exact same lieutenant position I held before and all those specific duties delegated to me by the police commissioner, but I had status as a lieutenant and I go back to being a police lieutenant as opposed to cleaning out my desk and going home because I've been fired. Rule 9, separation and disciplinary actions. Section 1 states tenure. Every employee who is legally appointed as a result of certification from an appropriate eligible list and who successfully completes his or her working test period shall have indefinite tenure of employment in the classified service during meritorious service. What does that mean? It means permanent civil service employees may only be disciplined and dismissed for cause. We can move on to the next slide, please. Separation and disciplinary actions continue. Section 3, disciplinary action. Employees in the competitive service may be dismissed, demoted, reduced in pay, suspended without pay, or reprimanded for just cause. Appointing authorities may take one of the following disciplinary actions for just cause with the Director of Personnel's approval. They can reprimand the employee in writing, commonly known in layman or layperson's terms as being written up. They can suspend the employee without pay for a period not to exceed 28 calendar days and any 12 successive months. They can do a temporary reduction in pay. The reduction in pay may not be greater than 15% and may not exceed 13 pay periods. Here at the city, we have 26 biweekly pay periods. So in other words, a reduction in pay can't be greater than 15% and longer than half a year. We could move on to the next slide, please. 4, disciplinary demotion to a vacant position in a lower pay grade for which the employee is qualified within the division or department. Let's say I'm promoted to a deputy director of personnel. My boss just doesn't think I'm cutting it, but I had status as an HR manager. Rather than throw me out on the street, they can give me a disciplinary demotion and I could return to being a HR manager. And then the final step would be dismissal. Now, the city civil service has a progressive discipline policy, and this is explained in Department of Personnel Administrative Regulation number, that's a typo, I apologize, 117, discipline policy. Shame on me. If anyone wants to do a little light reading, is having trouble going to bed and needs help falling asleep, you can Google Department of Personnel Administrative Regulations for the City of St. Louis, and there's a rather lengthy document, Administrative Regulation number 117. And this regulation is the document of record for the process of disciplining civil service employees. Appeals of discipline and dismissals are granted by the Civil Service Commission if said actions do not follow this regulation. And it's important to point that out because since it does happen. Me and my colleagues here in the Department of Personnel are pretty strict about following the regulation and doing it by the book, so to speak. Now, progressive discipline places an employee on notice that their actions will not be tolerated, and if continued, will result in more serious discipline up to and including dismissal. Each offense must be judged on a case-by-case basis and consideration given to the employee's entire work history when determining the appropriate action to take. If we could please move on to the next slide. The Department of Personnel reviews all proposed discipline to ensure that it is appropriate and progressive in nature, excluding those instances that warrant an exception to progressive discipline. Now, circumstances may necessitate relieving employee from duty and thus placing said employee on forced leave pending an investigation and/or pre-termination review. And generally, forced leave is appropriate when the employee poses a threat to himself, herself, or other employees on the work site. So if somebody is making threats of workplace violence, if they've been caught stealing, we may need to do a pre-termination review hearing. And we here in the Department of Personnel may need to approve that, but that would be an exception to progressive discipline. We could move on to the next slide, please. Whenever an appointing authority disciplines an employee, the following must occur before the disciplinary action is approved by the Director of Personnel, and that official disciplinary documentation is placed in the employee's personnel file here in the Department of Personnel. The employee must be given a pre-disciplinary notice, and review is required prior to the imposition of any disciplinary action of a permanent civil service employee. The pre-disciplinary review is an informal procedure in which the appointing authority or his or her designee advises the employee of the charges against him or her, or them or they, gives an explanation of the charges and evidence, and allows the employee an opportunity to present facts prior to any disciplinary action being taken. And if we could move to the next slide, please. The disciplinary review is not a formal hearing, nor is it an extended procedure at which the employee presents witnesses or cross-examines individuals, etc. The written notice must be hand-delivered to the employee or sent by certified mail. And there are certain things the written notice must include, which are the following statements of fact: that disciplinary action is being considered, the specific charges, including pertinent dates, the civil service rules or Department of Personnel administrative regulations violated, or even workplace rules. For example, the Division of Corrections has its own policies, procedures, and workplace rules. So if I'm a correction officer and have violated workplace rules and procedures, that needs to be in my pre-disciplinary review notice given to me by the Commissioner of Corrections or the Commissioner's designee. The notice must include the place, date, and time of the review, and that the employee has a right to a representative. Also, that the employee's prior work record is being considered, and that failure to appear shall waive an employee's right to a disciplinary review. If we could do the next slide, please. During the disciplinary review, the following must occur. The appointing authority or their designee must state the purpose of the review, advise the employee of the charges, give the employee and or their representative the opportunity to review any evidence against them, give the employee and or their representative the opportunity to respond to the charges. And upon completion, the appointing authority shall make a determination regarding the employee's discipline and notify the employee of the decision in writing within 14 calendar days from the date of the review. Unfortunately, I've had to do several of these kinds of hearings, and even be a part of dismissing employees. So the way I handle it is short, simple, and to the point. I'll take the notice I've given the employee, put it in front of them and say, okay, you received this letter, the charges are in it. If they have a representative, you and your representative are both here. How would you like to respond to these charges? Again, it's not a formal hearing. They don't get to present witnesses. They don't get to treat this like a deposition where they cross-examine me, even if they have an attorney as their representative. It's merely the process to respond to the charges and explain any mitigating circumstances. And then after the hearing, the appointing authority has 14 days to respond in writing with their decision. If we can move on to the next slide, please. This slide covers forced leaves and dismissals. The rule and regulation permits exceptions to progressive discipline. In such cases, the appointing authority must notify the director of personnel or designee in writing of their desire to place the employee on forced leave, the reason, and obtain the approval within 3 calendar days or 72 hours. The employee shall be notified in writing by their appointing authority that they are being placed on forced leave. The employee may elect to be placed on either vacation or compensatory time if they have it, and if they have no such accrued leave, they can be docked. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is with COVID, and I know it's been a few years since 2020, the city overall has been making a practice of recommending that forced leaves be with pay, just because there's a backlog of cases that go before the Civil Service Commission, and more appointing authorities are usually, from what I've seen, requesting longer than 30 days and an extension to do their investigations. So I merely mentioned this to point out that most forced leaves, to my knowledge and in my experience as of late, have been with pay. Okay, if we can move on to the next slide, please. Some exceptions to progressive discipline, which result in an appointing authority requesting forced leaves, are the commission of any act while on duty or off duty, which would be a violation of federal, state, or local law, other than minor traffic violations. Now, this does not mean that a conviction or even arrest need have occurred for such a violation. Also, physical abuse of citizens, patients, clients, visitors, supervisors, or fellow employees, or any other violations of the city's policy on workplace violence. Unauthorized possession of a firearm or other dangerous weapons on city property or premises. Violation of the policy against harassment or the equal employment opportunity policy and complaint procedure. If we could move on to the next slide, please. Here's some more examples of progressive discipline. Possession of alcoholic beverages while on duty, illegal possession or sale of a controlled substance, or illegal drug while on duty or off duty. This would be especially critical if somebody is in a law enforcement position or a correctional officer position. Inability to perform their duties in a safe and normal manner due to the use of alcohol, illegal drugs, abuse of legal drugs, or other intoxicants. Refusal to submit to scientific tests to determine the presence and/or amount of alcohol and drugs. Unauthorized removal of city property, basically stealing. Participation in any political activity prohibited by the Charter of the City of St. Louis or civil service rules. If we could do the next slide, please. There are further examples here. So I think you get the idea. It's not contrary to misconceptions or whatever jokes city employees may make. It's not impossible for a civil service employee to be fired. And there are acts so egregious that before the due process of a disciplinary or termination hearing, an employee can be removed from the job, and put on forced leave if they misbehave. If we could do the next slide, please. The process for a pre-termination review, which is preemptive to a dismissal, is basically the same process for a pre-disciplinary review hearing. The employee must be given written notice. It must state that their dismissal is being considered. The notice must contain the charges against the employee. Same as with a disciplinary action, it has to advise the employee of their right to have a representative, the date, time, and location of the hearing, that it's their responsibility to notify the representative of all of that information, and that failure to appear for their dismissal hearing will waive their right to the hearing. If we could do the next slide, please. Once the hearing is conducted, the appointing authority has 14 calendar days to respond in writing to the employee and notify them of the outcome of their disciplinary or dismissal hearing. The written notice must either be hand-delivered to the employee or sent by certified mail to the employee's address of record. And the decision can be: 1, no disciplinary action is required. 2, dismissal is too severe, but a lesser form of disciplinary action is required. Or 3, the dismissal is actually warranted. Next slide, please. The City of St. Louis has the right to take any and all appropriate disciplinary actions up to and including dismissals based on the circumstances of improper employee conduct while on the job or off duty. And a permanent City of St. Louis civil service employee has the right to appeal their dismissal to the Civil Service Commission within 10 calendar days of the effective date of the letter sent to them by the Director of Personnel approving the dismissal. And I mentioned that because once the Director of Personnel or their designee, at the moment it's me, I review discipline and dismissals for the director and sign off on them for the director. Once all that's done, the Director of Personnel sends a letter to the dismissed employee notifying them that they've reviewed the circumstances of the dismissal, that it meets charter and rule and regulation requirement, and that they have approved the dismissal, and they are hereby notifying the employee that they have 10 calendar days to approve their dismissal to the Civil Service Commission. And this letter basically, I jumped ahead. It does all the things I just mentioned. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Now, Civil Service Rule 13 covers the Civil Service Commission and the appeal process. The Civil Service Commission is the policy-making body for the merit system of the City of St. Louis. And the charter vests the commission with responsibility for making rules and adjudicating appeals consistent with Article 18. Their duties are quasi-judicial as well as quasi-legislative in nature. The commission has the authority to adjudicate appeals from permanent employees who believe they have been unfairly disciplined or dismissed. And hearing officers assist the commission by conducting the appeals scheduled for formal evidentiary hearings, and the commission reviews the proceedings of these hearings and renders their decision. If we could do the next slide, please. All motions are on record and submitted with the record. All hearings are closed and recorded. And the examination of witnesses consists of 1, direct examination, cross-examination, and 3, redirect examination. All parties are entitled to subpoena witnesses to testify at hearings. The decision of the Civil Service Commission in all such matters is final, subject, however, to any right of action under state and/or federal law. No rehearing shall be granted from a final decision of the Civil Service Commission. And I just like to share with you, I think these are really critical points, because even though a civil service employee has the right to pursue legal remedies in circuit or federal court if they believe they've been unfairly treated, there's this whole concept of exhausting internal remedies. And that's why it's necessary for an employee to file with the Civil Service Commission and exhaust that internal remedy of appealing to the commission and having this quasi judicial body adjudicate and render their decision before the employee files in court. Next slide, please. Decisions of the Civil Service Commission are final. And to quote Civil Service Rule 13, after hearing and/or reviewing and considering the evidence for and against the employee, the commission shall prepare a report of its findings and conclusions of law, approving or disapproving the disciplinary action. In case of approval, the disciplinary action shall be deemed final as ordered. In case of disapproval, the commission shall order the reinstatement, demotion, suspension, and/or reduction in pay of the employee, or such other action as it deems suitable, and order full pay for the time lost as the result of the disciplinary action. And next slide, please. So here's my summary and conclusion, and then you won't have to listen to me anymore. There is a formal and well-documented process for disciplining and dismissing permanent civil service city employees. Any recommendations for disciplining and dismissing permanent employees resulting from investigations by the Civilian Oversight Board or Detention Facilities Oversight Board must comport with pertinent civil service rules and Department of Personnel administrative regulations. Failure to comply with the above can and will result in disciplinary actions being overturned by the Civil Service Commission. And dismissals overturned on appeal will result in the employees being reinstated with payment for lost wages and possibly other damages and their attorney's fees. So in closing, employee discipline is extremely confidential, and records pertaining to the hiring, firing, and disciplining or promoting of employees by a public body are considered closed records under the Missouri Sunshine Law. The city also enacted a privacy ordinance with Board Bill 663, which was approved on April 12th of 1990. And this ordinance also closes certain individually identifiable personnel records to the public, except records that pertain to the names, positions, salaries, and lengths of service of officers and employees in the city's civil service. That information is not closed. So basically, I think just this past August, the Post-Dispatch did an annual publishing of salaries for City of St. Louis employees. And whenever the Post publishes that information, it gives names, job titles, length of service, and our salaries. That is basically the information that is public under Sunshine Law and under the city privacy ordinance. Next slide. Does anyone have any questions? The city's charter, civil service rules, and Department of Personnel administrative regulations are available online. Google is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and these are public documents and easy to pull up in a Google search. For me, I find myself almost daily Googling City of St. Louis Charter, Civil Service Rules, and Department of Personnel administrative regulations. They're all out there for your convenience. But I will be the first to tell you these are not light reading and can be difficult to understand. So don't go it alone. The Department of Personnel is here to help you. And one of my current roles for the Director of Personnel is Senior Policy Advisor. And I'm here as a resource for you. Yesterday morning, I was working out at the gym, and in between sets, I took a break to answer texts from my director and invited her to call me, and we talked on the phone while I lifted my weights. I'm here for you as well. If I can be of service, I believe in earning my paycheck, and I'm happy to help. And if there's anything I'm able to do, answer a basic question, share my knowledge, I'm here for you. My office number is 314-622-4087. My work cell is on there too. And my email is in the city email directory, beckelmanb@stlouis-mo.gov. and I'm happy to be of assistance. So that is all I have. Does anyone have any questions? I'm happy to try and answer them for you if I can be of further assistance.
I've got a question.
Sure.
Um, so I'm on the COB and as you know, we'll be making recommendations for possible discipline. It sounds like the recommendations that I'm just kind of confirming things more than asking
Sure.
a question.
Yeah.
It seems like the recommendations we're allowed to make are reprimand in writing, the suspending for maybe without pay for up to 28 days, reduction in pay, and then if it's one of those exceptions, the progressive part, dismissal.
Correct. Correct. So to kind of go over it in simple terms, a written reprimand, it's that, a slap on the wrist. We're not touching your pay. We're just putting you on notice that you did something that was unacceptable. It warrants discipline. It's formal discipline in that, if you're my boss and I'm your subordinate, you're not sitting me down and just informally telling me, hey, this happened, we got this complaint. I'm letting you know because we have to talk about it. Don't let it happen again. A written reprimand is beyond that point. The thing about a written slap on the wrist, though, is you still have to follow the formal process. If I'm the commissioner of corrections or the current acting commissioner, I still have to give the employee that written notice, scheduling them for the hearing. The suspension, same thing. And I just would again point out it is a progressive discipline. It, you know, you the punishment has to fit the crime. You don't necessarily want to do a 28-day suspension unless it's really, 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 really that bad. Reduction in pay is also a useful tool too. We are understaffed on police officers. We are understaffed on correction officers. The reduction in pay gives the commissioners the flexibility to discipline the employee, do something that is meaningful. It affects their pay, but they still have to come to work every day. They just make less money while they're doing their duties. I personally think it's kind of evil if you want to use a little bit of humor because they don't get a couple of days off, they get a cut in pay. And it's not remarkable. It happens all the time with difficult to fill positions, especially our paramedic and EMT positions in the fire department.
And I guess the other thing too is, will we have records of, someone has had 5 written reprimands already? Will we have those records as the COB?
I that's a really good question, and I don't want to fudge or fake or mislead you.
Okay.
My guess honestly is I would think not because employee discipline are closed records. Now, with that said, hypothetically speaking, and I hope I don't get myself crossways with my boss, the director of personnel here. The board does have investigators, and hypothetically speaking, I suppose an investigator could request to come over to the Department of Personnel and review the personnel file of an employee that's being investigated. I think that's a possibility. But again, just because I have a really good imagination and think it's allowable, I'm not the director. I haven't spoken to my director about this. And this is something that would have to be discussed by the board with the director. I will do my due diligence after this meeting and email Director Sonia Jenkins Gray and let her know that the question was raised and bring to her attention that because I was trying to be helpful and said I think it's possible she may get a request from the board moving forward. And we'll see what happens after that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, how can I help? Hi.
Hi. Again, my name's Keith Rose. I'm also on the Civilian Oversight Board. Thinking maybe more as a regional issue, one of the things that we hear a lot across St. Louis, whether it's in news articles or on the street, is that there is a really concerning revolving door throughout different police departments for officers. Often officers leave behind a trail of bad actions. And I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit more about whether it's personnel or another department, like who would be the ones who would hold the decision about going after someone's post certification, police officer certification? Is that something that you all do? Is it something another department does? Does no one do it? And can you talk a little bit about like what kind of tests you might utilize when deciding if it would be important for a certain officer's conduct to be reflected on not only their internal departmental record, but also on their state licensure? Well,
You know, those are really, really excellent questions, Keith, and I wish I had a good answer for you. I'd rather be woefully honest and tell you I don't have answers. I have a couple of thoughts. Okay, I can share with you my experience and a little bit about me. I just hit 19 years with the Department of Personnel November 1st. Prior to becoming a deputy director in 2021, I did review discipline for just about every city civil service department, review it, sign off on it, work closely with director, a past director, and now again with a current director on reviewing that discipline. I can tell you that I don't honestly know anything about saying, wow, this looks really bad. We need to notify the state Missouri Department of Public Safety and try and get their post certification revoked because clearly this behavior raises the question of whether or not they should continue working in law enforcement. I think that is something that the police commissioner and their executive staff could speak um, to and hopefully give you some answers to their questions. I've always found Police Captain JD McCloskey a really good resource. It's been my experience reviewing discipline that under Police Commissioner John Hayden and under Police Commissioner Robert Tracy, there's been a really good effort to hold bad police officers accountable for their actions and discipline them and dismiss them if their behavior warrants that. However, there's only so much here in the Department of Personnel we actually get involved with. Here's an example. I found out today that a police officer did something bad to a coworker. They could be scheduled for a pre-termination review hearing. The officer is a member of the SLPOA, which is the bargaining unit or union that represents him. They talked to the union's legal counsel and they basically decided, I just want to resign. Would you let me do that? So the discussion, the question for me was, can we let them resign? Yeah, the police commissioner is the appointed authority. They can choose to accept that resignation. But with that said, if the police commissioner said, hypothetically, no, I don't accept your resignation. I'm going to schedule you for this pre-termination review, pre-dismissal review hearing. Well, that's fine. The commissioner can do that. But if the employee says, okay, great, see ya, I resign anyway, there is no mechanism in place for the police commissioner or the director of personnel or me as the director's designee to stay, wait, come back. You have to go to this hearing. By golly, we're going to fire you. So that's kind of the framework we're dealing with here. Misconduct can be held accountable by a disciplinary hearing and firing the employee. But if the employee decides to walk and tender their resignation, we can't really stop them either. So that's just the reality of the work environment we have here. And I hope this information is a little helpful with now that you have it. Maybe you can, as a board, possibly contact the Department of Public Safety and ask them how you can better work together to make recommendations to revoke a bad actor's post-certification. And maybe Commissioner Tracy or his designee could give you more more specific information that I'm unavailable to give. I
Thank
hope
you
that
so
helps.
much, Brian. And I actually wanted to just say that our next presenter who's on the call too, he might be able to answer some of those questions about
Wonderful.
post as well. Yes, so if that helps.
Great, great. And I don't want to keep the next presenter waiting, but if anyone else has any questions, well, if anyone doesn't, again, allow me to please thank Nicole and the board here for your time. I know our time is precious. There's just not enough hours in the day to do the meaningful work we have to do. So I hope you found this presentation helpful. And don't be bashful. I'm always here to be a tool and a resource for your assistance. If I don't know the answer, as you can see, I'll tell you I don't know. But what information I have and I'm able to share, I'm more than happy to do it. So please don't hesitate to reach out through Nicole or Ms. Bonner or anyone else that or contact me directly. I'm here for you and I'm happy to be of assistance. And before I go, allow me to please wish you and your families a very happy and safe Thanksgiving holiday.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's always a pleasure to have you, and we really appreciate all of your assistance and your time and dedication to helping us this evening. Thank you so much.
You're too kind. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See you.
Well, good evening, everyone, again. I would like to introduce our next guest speaker, who is with us on the call now. We have Lieutenant Harris on the call, who's our new commander for internal affairs, and I will let him introduce himself, as well as he also has one of his staff on the call this evening, who are both our subject matter experts that will deliver best practices for investigations. So thank you, Lieutenant Harris, for being on the call this evening, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Evening, everyone. As Nicole said, I'm the new commander of the Internal Affairs Division. I'm Lieutenant Jesse Harris. Hey, I've been a police officer with the City Police Department for 30 years now. I've been in this position for 2 weeks. So I'm just coming in the door. I'm trying to get my feet settled. So just bear with me. We'll get through this presentation. Also on the call with me, I have my Deputy Commander of the Internal Affairs Division, Sergeant Nate McGraw, is here with me, and we're gonna work together and get through this presentation. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to chime in with questions, or you can wait to the end, write them down or whatever, and present them at the end, but however you wanna do it, it's fine. Nate, is there anything you wanna add before I start? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, hearing you loud and clear.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Just 1 second, guys. I'm trying to get Sergeant McGraw back on the call.
I'm on her.
All right. You wanna
Can
go
you
ahead and
see-
introduce yourself real quick so we can get started?
All right, my camera off. Can you see me?
Go ahead, Nate.
Okay, can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'm Sergeant Nate McCraw with the Internal Affairs Division. I've been on the police department 22 years. Started off in West St. Louis, did about 11 years there. I went to the domestic abuse response team, spent a few years there. Spent a few years in child abuse. Got promoted in 2018. Went back to the West St. Louis to police. 2019, I came to IED. As of September last year, I took on the role of Deputy Commander in IED, and been here ever since.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started, guys. So the Internal Affairs Division is located at police headquarters here at 1915 Olive Street. We're on the 7th floor of police headquarters. I'll go over our division structure. So the overall command of the unit is Lieutenant Colonel Mike Sack. He's the commander of the Bureau of Professional Standards. And under him is our deputy commander, second in charge of the Bureau of Professional Standards, Major Janice Bostruck. And then you have myself, who is the commander of the Internal Affairs Division. As stated, Sergeant McGraw is my deputy commander. We have 6 investigators who are all at the rank of sergeant that investigate all cases brought into the Internal Affairs Division. We also have our Workers' Compensation Division. It's also out of the Bureau of Professional Standards. Our ISC, systems coordinators. These individuals are responsible for gathering video for us, our 911 calls and things of that nature. They're also out of our Bureau of Professional Standards Division.
Hey, Lieutenant, can I add that one of our investigators, Sergeant Mickey Owens, he's a task force officer, which means he works out of the Federal Bureau of Investigations building. He not only investigate federal violations here, but officers from different municipalities throughout St. Louis. So if we ever have a federal investigation going on, we got a specialist in our office that are looking to it.
Anybody have any questions about the structure of our division? Okay, I'll move on to the responsibilities of the Internal Affairs Division. Okay, we conduct investigations of a confidential nature into matters involving deficiencies of and/or accusations made against department personnel, meaning that all of our investigations are highly confidential in nature. Second, we review and investigate all reports of shots fired by police officers. We have our Force Investigative Unit who will typically investigate any criminal element involving shots being fired by an officer in conjunction with our homicide section. The Internal Affairs Division will come in afterwards and review the policy involving officer-involved shootings. We basically make sure all of the department policies and procedures were followed in police shootings. Next, we control and coordinate the department's disciplinary procedures. So all investigations and discipline that's levied after investigations are completed will come directly from the Internal Affairs Division. We are the only unit that administers discipline on the department. And monthly, we submit a report to Commissioner Tracy, which details the type of investigations that we have and the investigations which are currently being conducted. Okay, online complaints. So if civilians would like to lodge complaints, say they don't want to go to the COB, they have no interest in going to the area station to lodge complaints, they can go on the department's website, www.slmpd.org, and lodge their complaint online. Okay, the next slide talks about our investigative process, and it talks about the criminal investigations which we conduct. We conduct the investigations on federal, state, and local levels. In our criminal investigations, the discipline is not administered by the department. In all criminal investigations, the punishment is administered by the courts, and there has to be proof beyond a reasonable doubt in the court system. And for criminal investigations, officers are given their Miranda warnings, just like any other individual. Next, I'll go through our investigative process for internal violations. And these investigations are conducted by the Internal Affairs Division, and these are all investigations for the violation of department policy. And this discipline is administered, unlike criminal investigations through the court, this discipline is administered through the department internally.
Sir, are you using slides? We can't see them if you are. I don't know if
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Okay, it's no worries. You're good.
Oh my goodness. I thought you guys, I'm glad you finally said something. I thought you could see. I can't see you guys, so It's making it kind of difficult.
I can make you the host so you can share them if that'll help.
Okay. Is that Reddit?
No, that was Answar.
Okay.
This is me. And
Okay,
if you don't mind, somewhere we can loop around. I don't want to break up the flow of your presentation because I think it's going well. But I did want to ask you a little bit about Garrity or just get some clarity on that. If
yeah, I'm coming up to that in the next few slides. But
okay.
I put it up for my presentation, Reddit, and I thought you guys were able to view.
No, we don't have the shared screen yet, but we were just following along with your presentation.
I made you the host. All you gotta do is to share the screen now.
I hit share. Can you guys see it now?
Now it's up now.
You know, the problem was it was not you guys. I failed to hit share on the Zoom. So it was not you guys, that was me. So let me go back to my point. Hold on one second. Yes, I didn't hit the share button. Sorry about that, guys. Thanks for telling me the slides were not playing. I had no idea. I thought you guys could see it.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, let me go back to the internal investigations. So the internal investigations is where IAD, we conduct all of the internal investigations. And we investigate all department policy infractions. So, and that discipline is administered solely by the Internal Affairs Division. And this one, the burden of proof is 51% preponderance of evidence. So a little bit more than 50% of burden of proof. So next, what Reddit was talking about was Garrity. So Garrity is what an officer has to be given their Garrity warnings or rights read to them. And it's where we can talk to them and tell them that, hey, you have to give a statement, whether it's coerced or not, but that statement cannot be used against them criminally. So I put a slide in here. I want you guys to take a look, and it pretty much explains Garrity in 2 minutes. Okay, so everybody should be able to follow this.
Hello, I'm Tim O'Neill. I represent over 1,000 public safety officers here in North Central Illinois. Today I want to talk about a case I'm sure you've heard about, but maybe don't quite understand. It's called your Garrity rights. The Garrity rights emanate from a case called Garrity versus State of New Jersey. In 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court decided this case. The quick facts are there were several police officers in the state of New Jersey who were charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice. When they were brought in for questioning, they stood on their rights under the Fifth Amendment not to incriminate themselves. When they were told that if they didn't speak, they would forfeit their jobs, their seniority, and their pension, then they confessed. They were convicted and lost their jobs, their seniority, and their pension. Noting the distinct unfairness of that choice they had to make, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed the convictions and found that their confessions were not voluntary, but rather coerced. Out of that case came the Garrity rule, whereupon if your employer charges you with a violation of some general order or rule of the department, hello, I'm Tim O'Neill. I represent over 1,000 public safety officers here in North Central Illinois. Today I want to talk about a case I'm sure you've heard about, but maybe don't quite understand. It's called your Garrity rights. The Garrity rights emanate from a case called Garrity versus State of New Jersey. In 1967, the U.S. Supreme Court decided this case. The quick facts are there were several police officers in the state of New Jersey who were charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice. When they were brought in for questioning, they stood on their rights under the Fifth Amendment not to incriminate themselves. When they were told that if they didn't speak, they would forfeit their jobs, their seniority, and their pension, then they confessed. They were convicted and lost their jobs, their seniority, and their pension. Noting the distinct unfairness of that choice they had to make, the U.S. Supreme Court reversed the convictions and found that their confessions were not voluntary, but rather coerced. Out of that case came the Garrity rule, whereupon if your employer charges you with the violation of some general order or rule of the department, they can compel you, coerce you to make statements against your self-interest. However, those statements cannot be used against you in any criminal proceeding. And the other part of that rule is they have to advise you before you make any statement against your self-interest that it's only going to be used for internal administrative purposes and for no other purpose.
Oh, God. Sorry, guys, the computer keeps jumping. We've been having computer issues all day.
The quick facts are there were several police officers in the state of New Jersey who were charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice. When they were brought in for questioning, they stood on their rights under the Fifth Amendment not to incriminate themselves. When they were told that if they didn't speak, they would forfeit their jobs, their seniority, and their pension, then they confessed. They were convicted and lost their jobs, their seniority, and their pension. Noting the distinct unfairness of that choice they had to make, the U.S. Supreme can compel you, coerce you to make statements against your self-interest. However, those statements cannot be used against you in any criminal proceeding. And the other part of that rule is they have to advise you before you make any statement against your self-interest that it's only going to be used for internal administrative purposes and for no other purpose. That's the progeny of the Garrity rule. And anytime your employer calls you in and wants to talk to you, they should advise you of your rights under Garrity. And if they don't, the whole statement you make can be thrown out because, again, it's not voluntarily made. If you have any questions about how Garrity affects you, or if they didn't read you your rights, give me a call or send me an email. I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thanks a lot.
Okay, guys, sorry about any issues we had with the video. I apologize. Like I said, we've been having issues with our computers all day, and they probably looped on us a couple times. So Sergeant McGraw, do you want to take over with the dual investigations as far as internal and criminal?
Sure, I can do that. So whenever we get a complaint on a police department, if it has a criminal nexus, and I'm reading this without a script, so forgive me mumbling, 2 investigators are assigned to that. You got 1 criminal investigator and you got 1 internal investigator. And that's kind of where Garrity comes into play, because being a member of this department, you are compelled to make a statement to us about what happened, or you could be disciplined up to termination. With that being said, you still have your rights where you can invoke your rights and not make a criminal statement. So if 2 investigators are investigating a complaint, just say it's a complaint that an officer punched a citizen in the face. You got internal violations there as far as conduct unbecoming. That's not the behavior expected of an officer. At the same time, you got a criminal assault going on. So the two investigators could stay together to collect evidence, to go out to the scene, take pictures, get witness statements, get camera footage, anything involved in the investigative process up until we bring the target officer in. At that point, you have both investigators in the room, and the criminal investigator reads the employee their Miranda rights. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in court. You have the right to an attorney and to have him or her present while you're being questioned. At any time, you can stop this interview. They can say, okay, I don't wish to make a criminal statement. At that time, the criminal investigator has to leave the room. As an employee, they still have to speak on the conduct unbecoming, punching a citizen in the face. That is Garrity protected because we're compelling it, and it could never be used in the criminal case, case. So the criminal investigator is not even allowed to know what is said when it's guarantee protected. And one of the things we do here to make sure those interviews stay separate, we have 2 separate interviewing rooms, one for criminal, one for internal charges. So if they do make a statement that's guarantee protected, the investigator assigned to the criminal case will never get it. Any questions about that? Okay, Lieutenant, you can go ahead.
Okay. So next, guys, we'll go into how we classify our investigative findings as far as the cases go. And when an allegation is sustained, that means the investigation disclosed sufficient evidence to support the allegations in the complaint. Offended employee is subject to disciplinary punishment, ranging from reinstruction to dismissal. And next, if it's not enough evidence, it's classified as not sustained. And this simply means it's insufficient evidence available to either prove or disprove the allegations in the complaint. The employee is considered innocent until proven guilty. And if it's unfounded, the complaint was not based on facts as shown by the investigation, or the incident did not occur. And if an officer is exonerated, the action complained of did occur, but the investigation disclosed that the actions were reasonable, lawful, and proper. And if the complaint is completely withdrawn, that means the complainant withdrew the complaint and the investigation was terminated. And if we get cases that we feel that can be solved through mediation, that means the complaint process was resolved through mediation as described in the COB ordinance. And in all criminal cases, they are presented to the prosecuting agency. Okay, and when it comes to discipline, discipline can be accepted or appealed. If accepted, discipline is rendered using our classification. There's different ranges for a first offense, second offense, and third offense. Okay, and if it's not accepted, the discipline can be appealed. Okay. I'm sorry. All discipline can be appealed and reviewed by the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission consists of 3 individuals that are appointed by the mayor. Rulings made by the Civil Service Commission can be appealed in the St. Louis Circuit Court. And this next slide just basically talks about some of the tools we use here in internal affairs for our investigation. We conduct comprehensive interviews with victims and or witnesses during the investigations. We use in-car video cameras that the officers have. We use body-worn cameras. We use the GPS tracking that's in the police vehicles. And we also use the GPS cameras and things from the Real-Time Crime Center, our RTCC division out of police headquarters. So when it comes to making complaints, as stated earlier, citizens can go into any area station and complete a complaint form. They can go online, or they can respond to police headquarters and also the COB. And that's pretty much all of the slide, guys. I'm so sorry for all of the problems with the video. And at this time, I'll open it up for any questions.
I've got a few questions.
Okay.
Number one is, for the complaints, is there any way for individuals to make anonymous complaints? I know within the COB, it cannot be anonymous. I just wanted to check if there's any other ways to internal affairs. And
I'm unaware. Nate, do you know of any way they can make an anonymous complaint?
If they turn in an anonymous complaint to the stations, we still get those forms and we will investigate them.
Okay. Number two is being on the COB, since we do make recommendations. Will we know? And maybe this isn't a question for you, but maybe for someone else. But will we know if they've already had a first, second, or third offense? Because it sounds like you guys do different things based upon the number of offenses.
Sometimes, I'll go ahead, Lieutenant.
No, go ahead.
Sometimes, so we document our investigations on what you call an ARTS. It's an administrative
Report.
tracking sheet report. And sometimes in the footnotes, we would say, hey, this guy, instead of 1 day, will get 3 days because it's his second offense.
Okay.
So they get 3 days off with retraining. So a lot of times if you read those footnotes, because you all get a copy of the ARTS, you'll see what's going on.
Okay, perfect. And then my third question is, and this might not be for you guys once again. Is there any way that we can see the policies and procedures of the St. Louis City Police? I've not seen those yet. I mean, there's some online, but it's only a couple sections. It's not all the sections of the policies and procedures. And if I'm going to make recommendations, I'd like to see them.
Now, I'm not speaking 100% when I say this because the Civilian Oversight Board has a limited purview of what you guys can make recommendations on. I don't think you can get everything we have, but like I say, that's a question for your attorney to ask our legal department, and they have to work that out.
Yeah, Nate, I can also help with that question because as far as I know, our complete policy in its entirety cannot be released. But like I said, legal would be.
Yeah, I'll have to ask legal. I just find it hard for me to make a recommendation when I don't know what the policy is.
Yeah, that's just my understanding, but you could always, legal may say something different. Maybe they know something that I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? Okay.
Hey, just before we leave, to the fellow that was just talking, we've been working with the COB for a while. We got a couple veterans on the line. I think Answar May and Louisa Lyles, but we always had a good working relationship, and we've always been as transparent as we could be. So, and they've agreed with a lot of decisions we've made. So we plan on having that same good relationship going forward.
Okay. I'm trying to see who was the host? Let's see. This was a mess.
All right.
Hey, Reddit, are you still on the call?
All right.
I don't see him. Just get ready. You still there?
Oh, there he is.
I think he's trying to unmute himself. I'm trying to help him.
Yeah, you still on mute.
All right.
There he goes. There he
Can
goes.
you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you, Reddit.
I was trying to unmute. It was saying host wouldn't let me unmute. I was off camera. I was going to lose credit for attendance.
All right.
Get marked absent. Look at you.
So that's all of the slides. We open it up for questions. So if anybody has any more questions, now is the time. Like I said, I apologize for the errors with the video. One of my screens is still currently locked up right now, so I apologize for that. And if I went a little too fast. Just let me know if there's any questions we can answer. Shoot.
No, I think that was good, especially the Garrity stuff, man. That's always a little cloudy.
Yeah.
Even after you've been on for a while, it's always kind of, you know.
I agree with that. And Sergeant McCraw got a nice little presentation to add to the PowerPoint. So I think
that was good.
So
yeah, and I'm like you, I'm new over here, man. You just got there. I just got here in October.
Okay.
So just a little bit over a month. So I'm looking forward to hopefully working with you all to make some progress.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Well, if there's anything else, that's all we have. We fielded a few questions. Is it hey Reddit? Is it Rose that's running it? Who's
Answar, I think was hosting.
Okay, that's what I was trying to find. Okay.
You need host again?
No, Answar, we've been through the slides and we fielded a few questions, so that's pretty much all we had. Unless there's some more questions.
Anybody else got questions? Boy, I guess since everybody else is gone, turn it over to you.
Was that for me, Answar?
Boy.
Okay.
Were you finished with your presentation?
I am done with the presentation. Like I said, we are finished. We've answered some questions, and that's all we pretty much have. Harrison Ford is like he's saying something, but he's muted.
And I can't unmute him.
I think he's trying. He's saying I don't know.
I've been unmuted.
Yes.
Is there someone from the staff that's going through the agenda?
I think Ruby is off the call.
And I was just trying to say we couldn't unmute ourselves.
Okay.
Even if
The
we
only thing I
had
can do
something
is
to
ask
say.
you all to unmute. I don't have the ability to unmute you.
Yeah, I don't know who the host is per se.
I'm the host.
Okay, Answar is the host. Okay. Well, here, I don't know who ends it, but
it's normally somebody to take attendance and then call it to a close.
Right.
So Boyd, with that not being the case at this time, how would you like to proceed?
Well, is Dottie here? I see her picture.
Darling.
I know she took attendance, so she might want to follow through on the agenda.
Unless she's having problems unmuting too.
Oh my goodness.
You there, darling?
Reddit also, he says we can't unmute. No chat. They
I
can't
just
access
clicked.
the chat.
I just clicked the button to ask you to unmute, but I can't unmute you. Did you get it?
Okay, it keeps coming in and out. Now I can unmute, but for a while it says you can't unmute, and then if you try to say something in the chat isn't accessible.
Yeah,
so Dot is probably there.
Unmute. I can't
You're
chat
unmuted now.
either.
We can hear you unmute.
And the chat was
on
there.
the cell phone.
We can hear you, darling.
Oh, you guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. There's not much significance in the attendance shown with the board members. For the record, we had Derek Gilgore, is he still here? And Harrison Sand and Keith Rose. Those were the only 3 board members in addition to the staff. There were no members from the DFOB board.
Do you have any announcements about a next meeting or?
No, that information, if any, was not shared with me. The only thing left that I'm seeing on the agenda was, I'm not looking at it right now, but I believe it was closed session. But I don't know if there's any closed session discussion that needs to happen.
There is none required. If somebody wanted to make a motion, they could.
I
Or we
think
could,
two people want to talk, Keith Rose and Robert Suberi.
Are you
okay,
unmuted,
and
Keith? Okay, I think he's muted.
Yeah, but
the
they probably can't
purpose,
unmute.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to unmute. Before we leave tonight, I missed our last meeting because I had an emergency, and I see some people have missed this one. Could you please tell us where these recordings are being held and how we can access them?
Answar's got the answers. So,
Well, I know we recorded the meeting from last time, but as far as how you can obtain it, so you can go back through those meetings, that wouldn't be something I would have the answer to. Darling, what about you? I just host them and make sure that they get recorded and transcribed, so I don't really have that answer.
Yeah, those meetings are shared with the secretaries who do the transcription. They are stored somewhere. So I'm not sure if they are made public. If they are, and the decision is made to make them public, they probably would be on the website for the boards.
Or
I
if
think
not,
the
Keith,
board,
if you want to
I'm
call the
sorry.
office, if you want to call the office sometime tomorrow, Keith, we can find out that answer for you, and then we can get passed along.
Yeah, I think his question is about a board member, not really a member of the public, but
Sorry, I
that
can,
they missed something
yeah, I
and they
Yeah.
can
need
read
to
it
make
again.
it up.
Yeah, so I just want to say, as a volunteer, it's really frustrating to have the staff put that back on us to do. We were told that these things would be distributed, and since you all have our email addresses, I'm going to ask that you all just send a bulk email telling us how to do it so that we don't have to take time from our other jobs during the day tomorrow to call, because we were told that this would be a thing. I'm also kind of frustrated that I was just heard someone say if it's made public, since we all know that this is a public meeting that anyone could have joined. It's very, not only not in the spirit of the Sunshine Law, but not in the spirit of civilian oversight to think that maybe the recording of our meeting wouldn't be public. So I just hope that we start like thinking more about transparency in our government operations and also think about ease of access. So I
Well,
would
with all due respect, if I may,
Yes.
the training was changed. So the format of the training was changed. So we're just jumping in as far as being support. So as far as the questions that you are asking, we don't have the answers for that, and the staff who would have the answer to that are not available at the moment, which is why I just told you if you would like to call the office tomorrow, we can connect you with the right people. We just don't have those answers. So rather than to give you some misinformation, we would rather not.
Okay, so what I'm going to suggest is if you all cannot put this on the city's YouTube channel, which most other board meetings are, you could put them on some kind of drive and just send them out. And or if the chat were enabled, I would make right now a sunshine request to whoever your custodian record is to just make this available. And so I'm just going to do this verbally now. I request recordings not only of this meeting, but of the previous COB DFOB training. And I hope to get a response within 3 business days. Barbara, can you make sure that happens, please?
Yeah, and I think
Sorry,
that
it was just really
the
frustrating to hear it phrased as such, like, we don't know if we can give you a recording of a meeting that you were in, that the public was given. Does that make sense?
yeah, and I don't think that's what Miss Bettisy meant. I think what she's trying to say is that the acting commissioner that would be giving direction isn't present, and we just want to get this to you so that you can make up the sessions that you didn't get to see.
Right, but also if I were just a regular member of the public, I also would have access to that meeting without it, I think being at all edited or anything else. or
No, that
rendered
was just,
absent.
yeah, I just think that wasn't your exact question. I think she was just trying to respond to exactly what you asked.
Okay, well, I look forward to getting that in an email or some other way conveyed to me. Thank you.
Mr. Saberi, did you have a question?
I do. It's a real quick one. I thank you for letting me sit in the meeting. Interesting. I really was interested in getting in touch with someone from the Citizens Oversight Board, and I'd be happy to give you my contact information. The chat's disabled, so I can't put it in there, but specifically Harrison Sand and/or Keith Rose, I would love to at some point contact you. So I can spell out my email address, give you my telephone number, whatever.
Yeah, you can spell out your email address if you want, just recognizing that this is a public forum, so it will be shared with others too. What is the matter about? Because it might be something that might have to go through one of our actual meetings instead of a training.
Pretty general. I was just I'm just curious about the Civilian Oversight Board, and I'm interested. In what you do, how you do it. That's why it was interesting tonight to sit in. And there's some other issues too that I'd like to. I've just got some questions about. I mean, there's simple things that I don't want to take time in the meeting. I mean, if it's a problem, that's fine. I can give you my number.
Oh no, you're good. If you want to give me your email or number, I can reach out. I just can't promise I can answer things because I am not the Civilian Oversight Board. I am just a member of the board.
Harrison, the chat box is open too.
Go to the board. It might be better for you to come to. Okay, and it might be better for you to come to one of our board meetings. We have time for public comment that you could ask a question then. You might not get a response, but you can say things.
Okay.
Yeah, but if you want to share your email address, the only difficulty is I might have to say I cannot comment because I am not the board. It's the only thing I have to warn you about.
Right. Okay.
Yep. That makes sense. But if it's just general questions, I'm happy to talk and discuss.
Yeah, it's that, and with regard to Keith, there's a question that falls outside the purview of the Citizens Oversight Board that an article that I read that I just have questions about. So,
excuse me, Dr. Marlin, did you have something?
Thank you, Mr. May. My name is Dr. Barbara Milan. I am the new commissioner. I will officially begin my responsibilities on Monday, December the 2nd. I did hear your comments, Mr. Rose and Mr. Suberi. Just know that we will be following up to provide you the information that you have requested. I look forward to working with all of you.
Anybody else have any questions or public comment? If not, darling.
Oh, finally unmute. I guess with no further comment, we can call to adjourn the meeting or the training.
Someone may want to make a motion to adjourn. I see people attempting it.
So I guess Keith adjourn and Harrison at second. Okay, meeting is adjourned. It's now 5:50 p.m. Meeting is adjourned. The next meeting, I guess, will be announced.
Everyone have a good night.
Thank you.